So y'all reached out over the course of many different months, and especially in 2020, and asked me for an update on my disaster kit video series, so that's what we're doing today. So as you've seen in a lot of videos over the past, I've made a lot of different disaster kit videos. Started out with just having one tub if you're in like an apartment, and what, you know, having a disaster kit would look like probably in that situation. Moved into tubs like below here, where you have one for hygiene, one for food, one for tools, etc. Using that in conjunction with your backpacking gear would be a great setup. And then there's some stuff that we haven't talked about or it doesn't fit in the containers, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now 2020 was a pretty crazy year, and a lot of people reached out to me and they were like, is there anything additional that you do as far as disaster kits are concerned? And I thought about it, and I was like, you know what, I haven't made one of those videos in a while, but I do have some other stuff that I have here in our basement that's not in the boxes, the containers that we talked about before. Like we have one for hygiene, one for food, one for tools and equipment and stuff. So I'll go over some of the stuff we have here. I mean, first off, just like a 9-day candle. You can get these on Amazon, just a 9-day candle. A bunch of these will be great in case the electric goes out, particularly if it's like the summertime. Wintertime, obviously it's not going to keep you warm. But I don't think we had these specific ones in there, but I found these to be really good price. And for 9 days, you're going to get a lot of light for the cost. So the one big ticket item that I got recently was this Pecron lithium battery generator, or battery pack. And the cool thing about it is it's a 1500 watt peak, so you can plug in a 1000 watt heater and heat for about 2.5 to 4 hours, depending on, you know, what heater you have. But this would be a great way for a few hours of heat if your, you know, electric goes out and you have electric heat, etc. This would be a great way to kind of heat a room in case of emergency, and then you can charge it with a solar panel. The one thing I like about the Pecron, which is this one, is you can charge it and use it at the same time, which is pretty cool. So I just use this Rich solar panel. I don't know, it's called Rich Solar. It's not rich. It was only like about 120 bucks for this 100. I think it's 100 watts. Let's see here. Yeah, 100 watts. So, and this is their updated version, so it has better panels for more efficiency. Getting about 80 to 90 watts as far as like efficiency goes, so that's really good. So that combination is going to be great because you can charge it up and use it at the same time. Obviously, it's going to charge it a little slower if you're charging it and using it at the same time. So if you just charge it up without using it, it's going to charge up faster. But that's a really cool thing. Take this off-roading, you know, off the road. If you're going, you know, camping or whatever, deflate your tires with your air compressor, etc. So this is really cool with lots of different uses. You know, charging things up, obviously. If you have power out, charging your phone up, etc. But I have something else for phones that I thought was really cool. This is a King Solar charger panel. This is 40 watts. And I had this inside my house, just next to the window, plugged in my phone, started charging right up. This is awesome. It's a little expensive. I think it's around 60 bucks, but this thing is awesome if you're going for camping or you just want this to charge up your phone or your iPad, etc. Something with a USB port. This thing is really good to have. Some other stuff I haven't talked about much is like a radio. So if you have a GMRS license or ham license, or you just want to check in on things and not necessarily transmit, these BaoFengs, everyone's talked about them forever. Get a different antenna on it, but these work fabulous. I mean, even just for the weather.
1 7 8 6. Chance of rain 70%. Thursday, partly sunny with a chance of rain and snow.
So even just to have, just for the weather and understanding what's going on, you can scan some stuff. They're great to have, and to my knowledge at the moment, they're not, I mean, you can buy them on Amazon. But you have to have a GMRS license if you want to transmit on those bands, and you need to have a ham radio license if you want to transmit on those bands, etc. So make sure you have those, which I do. First, let me put some of this stuff away. You gotta stay organized if you want to be efficient. Obviously, if you have lanterns that use kerosene, this is no odor kerosene from Aladdin. I have a few of these to go for my kerosene oil lamps. Those are great. They provide a little bit of warmth and they provide light and not a lot of odor whatsoever. Up here, I have a Mr. Heater Buddy. These just go off of basic propane, little propane tanks. Has an oxygen, a low oxygen turn off. So if you're using it on indoors, if it senses the oxygen is at an unhealthy level, it'll kick this off. You don't have to worry about that. I've used this one time in that situation. Electric went out. The gas wasn't, as far as the gas heating and everything wasn't working. I popped this up and used it. Worked well. On top of that, we just use this outside. But this is great to have around. It's not so much about having the right stuff. It's about having options to use. A lot of the different things that you might have, like a candle, for instance, you can use that for heat. You can use it for light. You can use it to cook on. So the main thing with the setup that we came up with, as far as for disasters or whatever, is we have some containers full of things, and then we have our backpacking gear. If you go backpacking, camping, etc., that stuff is just supplemental. You're used to living like that, at least for a few days, which is probably all you're going to need it for in a natural disaster or a disaster of some sort. You're only going to need a few days for the most part, and that will cover the majority of disasters that happen. As far as like when things are down, there's no stuff at the grocery store, that stuff doesn't happen normally underneath a very large period of time. It's normally a few days of interruption. You get through that, you're good. So usually planning for what most likely will happen is the way to go, and then some. So if you're planning for, everyone says 72 hours, just if you hear people say 72 hours, just think of a week, right? So plan for a week. Once you feel secure that for a week you can sustain yourself, then move it up to a month. Okay, you're not going to be able, unless you have lots and lots of money and connections and whatever, you're not going to be able to jump in right away and have 1 year's worth of stuff. So think about the more important things: water, shelter. I mean, all the stuff that when you go out backpacking is a big deal. Or you go out in the wilderness, survival is a big deal. Think about that stuff first. So check out the videos that we have already on all the other stuff that we've talked about in the past. And then all this other stuff that you see, a lot of it's supplemental. It's not necessary. I was going to say necessarily. It's not necessary to have a lot of this stuff. But there are some things that are huge. And when it comes to communication, shelter, water, food, realistically, is not the top of the list. You can get away. I mean, are you going to be hungry? If you go from eating 3 meals a day to 1 meal a day, obviously you will. If you're rationing things out, you're going to be hungry in a really bad situation. But being hungry equals surviving. If you're going from over 2,000 calories a day to down to 1,000, yeah, I mean, you're going to be hungry. Me personally, I don't eat breakfast. I've never eaten breakfast. The only time I eat breakfast is Sundays. So I don't eat until around noon, and I stop eating around 7. I do intermittent fasting. So for me, it's a little bit easier than other people to be like, hey, I'm going to skip breakfast. So, just think about things like that. When you're getting into it, think about just getting what is absolutely necessary first. Water purification. If you have something that can purify water and take the viruses and bacteria and all that junk out of the water, and you have access to an area that has water, like a lake, stream, river, etc., you have just secured yourself a long time of living in a really bad situation, because you can drink clean water and stay hydrated. Shelter. You can just buy a nice tent and you have a shelter. Is it the best shelter? No, I would say figure out how to make shelter. That's a positive. Or you already have a shelter that is your house. And in a really bad situation, the majority of the time, like when the pandemic happened last year, we were all in our homes for the most part. So as long as you can secure those things, you're going to be good. When it comes to charging up your phones for communication, communication's huge. Get yourself something you can charge with, whether that means having solar and some battery packs. You have those like Anchor battery packs we've recommended in the past. having some of them will like totally get you through being able to be down as far as like electricity and stuff. I mean, we're not talking about sitting around playing video games and stuff when these situations occur. Your power's out, you're not playing video games. What's the most important thing? Communication. My phone's charged if I need to communicate, as long as the cellular lines are open, so to speak. So those things are really important. So think of it that way when it comes to you're preparing for a natural disaster, a disaster of some sort. A lot of people like pinpoint on what's going to happen, but I don't thinking about, like you watch Doomsday Prepper and they're like, I'm preparing for this, I'm preparing for that. It doesn't really matter what you're preparing for. The majority of the time you're preparing the exact same things as far as what you need. When it comes to anything that happens, the majority of the time you need the same things, at least the same basic things. The only thing different that you need to think about is if you think people, and a lot of people are using the terms like marauders and stuff, which is, I think, kind of funny. Evil people are going to come and try and take your things. So, I mean, you might need some self-defense of some sort. With the exception of that situation, take that out. The obvious, absolutely, probably not going to happen case scenario out. The rest of it is pretty much the same. Funny story. Mrs. Burrs' father, she asked him for mace one year for Christmas. So he bought her a mace. So anyway, there's a few extra things that we have going on with our, preparedness, survival stuff. It's not a lot that we didn't, show you before. Just some things I was kind of looking around. I was like, you know what? I haven't really mentioned these things, so I want to mention them. And then just to kind of get back in the swing of things as far as like, it is a strange time we're living in as far as we're still in the middle of a pandemic and rights being squashed. Just a strange time in general. So it's good to think about things and seeing what's out there. So right now, when you go to the grocery store, there's an abundance of food. It was kind of scary in the pandemic if you weren't somewhat prepared that when you went to the grocery store, the shelves were bare. So thinking about I always tell people this, like, if you look around and see there's an abundance of things, that's the time to worry about it, not when things go bad and everyone who didn't prepare or didn't think ahead is suddenly going to the store, trying to buy ammunition. Like, I had to order for ammunition in March of last year, and it's not going to be fulfilled until July of this year. So, not that I'm not prepared in terms of ammo, but I bought something at a reasonable price because I'm not going to pay $700 or $800 for 1,000 rounds of 5.56. And it just goes to show you that if you don't buy things when they're abundant, you're going to be waiting in line. And, that happens to almost everyone because no one's 100% prepared. So that's what I got. If you guys have any questions or anything, let me know. If you guys have a different way or some stuff besides what we've talked about in the past and this that you recommend, that's maybe, a medium-sized ticket item, not something huge that they have to put money into. Another cheap thing would be like water reservoir, rain collection. It's another thing you can do. You can do it on the cheap. You can do it by buying, $150 barrels, or you can just go, find YouTube videos where people just buy regular barrels here or there and they use that and it works fine. So there's a lot of different ways to do things also. So you got to think about that. There's the expensive way, which is usually the easier way, or there's the more ingenious way, which is usually you go find things for cheap and you build it yourself. So there's lots of different ways to go about things. But if you guys have any recommendations, go ahead and put those in the comments because we always appreciate that. And until next time, later.